You've joined the Interfaith Council of Contra Costa County and the Rossmore Interfaith Council for their series on Big Questions, the Purpose of Life with Rabbi Jerry Danzig today. And as usual, we start with a land acknowledgement that we live and reside and work on the land that is unceded by Ohlone and Bay Miwok and other First Nations that were pushed off their land or put into chattel slavery in the mission systems. And we also live in a land that has experienced slavery and in the enslavement of whole classes of people. So as we come into this space, we recognize our privilege being able to be here, but also being able to be people of faith, making the difference in repentance and moving forward in a post-colonial enterprise. Today, Sarah is going to get us started with an introduction of our speakers. Sarah?
Thank you, Will. Well, welcome again, once again, to you adventurers and explorers of the of our big question: what is the purpose of life? It's thank you to Susie Cole, president of the Interfaith Council of Rossmore. Thank you to our Big Questions Committee, Gloria Sunshine, Channing Miller, Ruth Ahern. And thank you, Will, for guiding us for the last year and a half as our Zoom host. And thank you also to Channel 28 for recording us. It'll be on Channel 28 in the next couple of months. So our question this year is not only a big question, but it is a foundational question. Foundational because the meanings and values for us personally can be built upon our answers. How we define the purpose of our life provides the foundation for the development of the purpose of life in general, the big picture. The first steps of building a house begins with a foundation. If indeed, as we have heard many times, we are what we think, then our thoughts provide the foundation for how we live our lives, how we build the rest of our house. Our thoughts about life are called philosophy. And philosophy is a largely ignored concept in today's world. Just say the word and see how people cringe. Most people do not relate to the reality and practicality of philosophy. However, our philosophy, our thoughts about life are foundational as to how we live life. So I submit to you that one of the purposes of life is to know ourselves, to be aware of and reflect on our foundation, reflect on our thinking. In other words, our philosophy. To be sure, it is within the realms of reality and incorporates the values of truth, beauty, and goodness. Philosophy can be seen as the glue which holds together material reality and spiritual reality. Philosophy is the unifying realm between science and religion and helps provide the foundation for the answers to our big question this year: what is the purpose of life? And now it is with pleasure I present to you Rabbi Jerry Danzig. His 50 years, that's a long time, 50 plus years of professional experience included 15 years as rabbi of Congregation Valley Beth Shalom in Encino, a stint as executive director of the United Synagogue of America in the Pacific Southwest region, as a faculty member of the University of Judaism in Los Angeles, and as a rabbi for Congregation Beth David in Saratoga. He also has served as a guest lecturer and educational director for various institutions. What a career, Rabbi Danzig. So thank you for joining us, and we look forward to your sharing.
Thank you very much, Sarah. It's a pleasure to be here again. although albeit through Zooming, and I feel like a Zombie myself. This is a very auspicious month for the Jewish people in the Jewish world. Tonight, we will begin a 7-day celebration of Sukkot, the Festival of Tabernacles, when we will dwell and eat in booths and mimetically relive the experiences of the Jews who 3,500 years ago lived in temporary booths as they wandered from their enslavement in Egypt to their promised land. In fact, each year, congregants of Bnei Israel erect a sukkah at the hillside complex. However, this year there will not be a sukkah building due to the COVID restrictions. Just 2 weeks ago, on September 7th, we ushered in the days of awe, beginning with the observance of Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year. It's not a rowdy New Year's celebration. On the contrary, it is a very sobering observance and prayer and meditation. Another name for Rosh Hashanah is Yom Hadin, a day of judgment. And a central portion of the services is the recitation of the liturgical trilogy, which after each segment, we blow the shofar and we recite the following prayer. Hayom Harat Olam Hayom Yamid Bamishpat. Today is the birthday of the world. Today we stand in judgment. Just as April 22 was set as Earth Day, a time to demonstrate support for environmental protection, the Jewish tradition set Rosh Hashanah to celebrate the creation of the world, however or whenever that auspicious moment began. Indeed, this is a wondrous creation and ought to be celebrated. So on Rosh Hashanah, celebrating the creation, we judge ourselves individually and collectively to consider what are we doing in and to this creation? What is our purpose in the world? And are we doing all we can to fulfill that purpose? So today's big question, does the world have a purpose, is so timely, and I feel privileged to study the subject with you. Get ready, Will. In 2007, the John Templeton Foundation was created. It is a multi-dollar foundation whose mission is to, quote, to serve as a philanthropic catalyst for discovery in areas engaging life's biggest questions. So the foundation posed the following question to 12 world-renowned scientists, philosophers, and theologians. Does the universe have a purpose? And here are their responses. So follow with me. I was going to, if we were in person, I would hand this out as I usually do. I have handout sheets. So look at their answers. No, Peter William Atkins is a fellow professor of chemistry in Oxford. Unlikely, Lawrence M. Krauss is a professor of physics and astronomy. Not sure, Neil deGrasse Tyson is an astrophysicist. I hope so, Elie Wiesel, typical of a Holocaust survivor's answer. Perhaps Paul Davis, a physicist, cosmologist, and astrobiologist. Very likely Bruno Guidardoni is an astrophysicist. Indeed, Nancy Murphy is a professor of Christian philosophy at Fuller Theological Seminary. Yes. Can you move it up a little bit, Will? Yes. Okay, very good. Yeah, indeed, we did that. Yes, David Galanter is a professor of computer science at Yale. Yes, John Haught is a senior fellow of science and religion. Yes, Owen Gingrich is a professor emeritus of astronomy. And certainly, Jane Goodall. If you would like a copy of this, okay, thank you, Will. If you would like a copy of this and their rationale, I'll be happy to email it to you, All you have to do is send me your email and address it to me at, if you have a pencil, yosefd@sonic.net. If you, each one of you who are here, were asked the very provocative and complex question, does the universe have a purpose? I think that you, along with the Templeton responders, are likely to be in the camp of yes or no, maybe, not sure, perhaps, hope so, indeed, very likely, and certainly. I am not in the caliber of such an august body of renowned scholars. But if the Templeton Foundation were to ask me that question, I would answer, I believe so. And this belief of mine is informed by my heritage, by my education, my experiences, and my reflections. Logotherapist Viktor Frankl, another Holocaust survivor, states in his book, Man's Search for Meaning, that we human beings are driven to seek meaning and purpose in our lives, and we do so by committing ourselves to a cause and a purpose outside of ourselves. Since the 4th century BCE, synagogues worldwide read a portion of the Torah every week together with a complementary selection from the prophets. The reading is accompanied by commentaries by scholars and rabbis, and thus the Hebrew Bible is always contemporized because we are in constant search for meaning and purpose as our world evolves physically and socially. We humans are endowed with imagination and free will. If we can imagine the technological marvels that have been created to enrich our quality of life materially, then we can imagine a purposeful world to enrich our social life. While theories of cosmogony fill libraries, the Torah or the Bible is not a text of science and dismisses perhaps billions of years of creation's evolution in 31 sentences in the first chapter of Genesis. Rather, the Torah is concerned about the human condition, the evolution of the moral and the ethical development of humanity necessary for us to be worthy of the creation. I don't know, or I should say I know very, very little about the origins of the universe and of our world, but to have a sense of purpose in this world is the human quest to seek meaning in our lives, and I believe transcends the evolution of the physical universe itself. So where to begin? Before we begin, I have to have a sidebar. I will be referring to the Torah, which is the 5 books of Moses who lived around 1200 BCE. The Torah was canonized at the time of Ezra at 444 BCE. The Torah is the fundamental constitution of the Jewish people. The text, like the U.S. Constitution, is immutable, but it allows for interpretation and contemporizing. I will be referring to the Talmud, which records the dialectical discussion among rabbis from the years 200 BCE to 500 CE. The Talmud is compiled into 63 tractates with copious commentaries on the laws, the myths, and the ethical principles of the Torah. The Talmud basically is a prophylaxis against literalism and fundamentalism. Now let's go back to the beginning. We're going to skip the creation in the first chapter of Genesis and go to Genesis chapter 2, sentence 3. I'm going to recite the Hebrew so that you can get a flavor of the sound of the original text. Vayorach Elohim et Yom Hashvi v'akadesh oto kivo shavat mikol melachto asher bora Elohim la'asot. Quote, and God blessed the 7th day and hallowed it because on it God rested from all the work which God had made, end quote. Now, this is the King James translation. Other translations read, which God had done, both suggesting that the world was completed at creation. Got to go to another sidebar. George Santayana, a prolific Spanish-American poet and philosophy noted for his quote, "Those who do not learn from the past are condemned to repeat it," is also quoted as saying, "A translator is a traitor." And he probably said that after he read an English translation of Don Quixote. While there is one original Hebrew Bible, there are many English translations of the Bible since the King James Version authorized in 1611. There is the New King James Version, the New American Standard Bible, the Revised Standard Version, and others. Even among the Jewish scholars, there are different translations of the Torah, the Hebrew Bible, which is used in the synagogues. Back to our text. The text does not say, "And God rested from all his work, asher asah," which he had done. Rather, the original Hebrew text reads, "And God blessed the seventh day and hallowed it, because on it God rested from all his work, la'asot," to do, to be done, the infinitive. That is, God's creation is to be completed. And later we read in Psalm 8, the psalmist poetically asks God, as it were, "Ma enosh v'tizkarenu," what is man that you are mindful of him? "V'tchasreu me'at me'elohim," yet you have made him a little lower than the angels. You made him to have dominion of the works of your hands. You have put all things under his feet, end quote. The rabbis in the Talmud pick up on this, and they state that we human beings are to be a shutaf lakodesh baruch hu b'maaseh bereshit, a partner with God in the works of creation. We who are created in the image of God are to complete the creation. I ask myself, what greater purpose in life could there possibly be imagined than this? To partner with God, as it were, by expanding, developing, and enhancing creation. And the rabbis in the 3rd century gave thought to this and included among our prayers the following blessing. Haroeh chachmei umot ha'olam omer baruch atah Adonai shenotan mechachmato lebasar v'dam. On seeing sages of all the nations of the world, one says the blessing, "Blessed are you, Majesty of the universe, who has given of his wisdom to mankind." Thus, the rabbis emphasize that human beings are distinguished from all other creatures in that we are blessed with divine wisdom and free will, which is our claim to dignity. With that God-given wisdom, we are to impart meaning and purpose into our lives and thereby into the world. It has been said, we are God's mortal agents for an immortal cause to expand and enhance creation. What greater purpose could there possibly be than this? One who believes in God must believe that God is a perfect being whose essential nature is unknowable. God is in need of nothing from us. For those of us that believe God created the world, God's reason for creation is beyond human comprehension. Judaism advances the notion that this world was created for the benefit of the creatures that were created on earth. This was emphasized by the rabbis in the Talmud which record the blessings of the to be recited, such as Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Baruch atah Hashem, shelo chiser be'olam ha'klum, uvoravo brio tovot, ve'ilonot tovot, lehitnaot bahem b'nei adam. Quote, Rabbi Judah said, this is in the Talmud Brachot, Rabbi Judah said, blessed are you, God, who has withheld nothing from his world and created in it beautiful creatures and beautiful trees for the enjoyment of mankind. That's a blessing. We humans are the beneficiaries of all that was created and all that is in this world has to offer. So what are the ways that we can fulfill our purpose in the world? The book of Leviticus laconically gives us one of many paths, such as Yohavta l'reacho kamocha. This has been also mistranslated as you shall love your neighbor as yourself. And I always ask, is it possible to love your neighbor as yourself? We had a neighbor in Santa Rosa about whom we had to call the sheriff several times. It was like living next door to a frat house, partying at 2 o'clock in the morning. Not even God could force me to love such a neighbor as myself. Blasphemy not intended. While most of our neighbors are wonderful people for whom we care, yet as Richard Price in 1758 wrote in his book, Questions and Difficulties in Morals, quote, when circumstances are equal, when the use of my resources can generate equal amounts of utility for myself and for my neighbor, it is simply right and fit that I prefer myself. Can love be legislated? About 375 years before the publication of the King James Authorized Version of the Bible, Rabbi Moshe ben Nachman, Nachmanides, a noted 13th century commentator on the Torah, points out that the text does not say, V'yohavta et re'echo kamocha, you shall love your neighbor as yourself, but the text states, V'yohavta li're'echo kamocha, you shall love for your neighbor as for yourself. And he goes on to elaborate on that. And the use of the preposition in the translation of this sentence profoundly changes the ethical force of this mandate. This is an ideal, to wish for my neighbor no less than what I have. As I do for myself, I want good health, peace, prosperity for my neighbor. Such an ideal shared among neighbors would prevent jealousy, covetousness between neighbors. And if we want to reduce poverty, crime, and promote peace among neighbors, we should want for all neighbors no less than what we want for ourselves. Quite a purpose, quite an ideal to strive for. The Torah is a text of ideals. And of ideals, Carl Schurz, an American statesman and journalist, said the following: ideals are like the stars in the heavens and the sky to the ancient mariner. They are unreachable, but they guide us. Another precept to love others is in the book of Deuteronomy. Ahavtem et hager ki gerim heitem be'eretz Mitzrayim. You should love the stranger, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. Our morality is conspicuously instructed by our experiences. We know what it is like to be a stranger in a land. And there are many other statements like this throughout the Torah. An important technical matter at this time. When reading the Bible translated into English, one does not know if the pronoun you is second person singular or second person plural. The Hebrew, on the other hand, is very specific. The ahavtem, you shall love the stranger. The pronoun here is in the second person plural. That is you, the collective, the community. are charged to love the stranger, the refugee who comes to your community, and who should be welcomed and treated in a kindly and helpful way so that he or she can assimilate into the community and become contributing citizens. This is a different dimension of love than that which you are commanded to have for your neighbor. There, the Hebrew states specifically, v'ahavta, you shall love. The pronoun here, you, is second person singular because you have a more personal and close relationship with your neighbor by whom you have probably lived for years than you do with the stranger and the refugee. Quite a challenge these days when we are witnessing worldwide migration of refugees. Quite a purpose. In the book of Exodus, while still in Egypt, the Hebrew slaves are about to be freed, but they are admonished before they are freed. Torah achat yiyeh la'ezrach v'lager hagor b'sochachem. There shall be one manner of law for the citizen and for the stranger who dwells among you. Equal justice for all under the law. Quite a challenge even for today, but essential for a purposeful world. Thus, the final book of the Torah, the book of Deuteronomy, emphasizes tzedek, tzedek, tirdof, justice, justice shall you pursue. If we can imagine such lofty thoughts, we can promote them as noble purposes into the world and emphasize and realize that we are capable and responsible to fulfill that purpose. A world without purpose is a nihilistic world defined as, quote, the rejection of all religious and moral principles in the belief that life is meaningless. Such a world is fertile ground for evil, chaos, and hatred to thrive. In conclusion, probably a word you've been waiting for, in conclusion, I have shared with you a sampling of the text that convinced me to believe that the world does have a purpose, but that it requires we human beings to strive to make this a purposeful, peaceful, livable world for all. And I leave it for you to decide if we human beings are on the right path to fulfilling that purpose. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi. That is much to think about. I've got about 3 pages of notes and I couldn't keep up with you. Say nothing about not being able to understand the Jewish.
Translated.
Right. But thank you. So there's many thoughts here that you've offered us. And this is now the time for the all of us, the attendees, to ask you questions and to share your own thoughts on what is your purpose in life, or what do you think the big purpose, the purpose of the big picture is. So sometimes we need to take just a big breath and give ourselves a little space before we begin to ask Rabbi Jerry questions, or to share our own thoughts on perhaps our own purposes and how we have come by our own purposes. And a good way to do it is to just raise your hand like that. I know that there's a hand on the reaction, but for some reason, I never see it. So if you have something to share or to say, yes, Bill Dickinson, please go ahead. Unmute yourself.
So Rabbi, I think purpose is something and meaning is something that we choose, not something that we go out and find. And I have lately found myself, my overarching sense of purpose comes from our president, who says he's trying to heal the soul of the country. And that has me looking at the news entirely differently. And it has me thinking it's quite close to the Jewish concept of tikkun elan.
Olam, yeah.
Yeah. Which,
Tikkun olam, yes,
Yes.
you're right.
yes. And looking at it through that lens, what I'm finding is the news is full of nonsense, because it isn't helping to heal the soul of the country. It's just keeping us in a state of alienation from one another. And that there are 39 million Americans stuck in poverty. And that we should be thinking about them. I guess that's mostly a comment, but my question to you is, my question really was, is helping to heal the soul of the country the same thing as tikkun olam?
Well, first of all, if you just read the news is not a moral authority. It never has been. It depends on which newspaper you read. It depends on which newscast you follow. All I do know is that following the news rather than the moral quest, that is to say the following. You know, when you're talking, I think about in his metaphysics on morals, Immanuel Kant wrote his categorical imperatives. And the first categorical imperative was the universalizability of what we say, of what you will. If you will something that you believe is universalizable, that means it would be applicable for all humanity, then that will is something that should be followed. The news, if your moral compass is pointing you toward the news, there's nothing but confusion in the newspaper itself. If I were to read only the news, I would be very despondent, like you are indicating about the future of this world. But I read the inspirational texts that give me a sense of hope and that tell me that humanity is not going the way the newspapers show me a way. There are other ways, and the other ways are more pronounced than the ones that reach the newspaper. The newspapers are sensationalistic.
Mm-hmm.
It's not universal. What is universal is that I think you'll find most people in the universe, in this world, I shouldn't say in the universe, because I think we're the only species, I hope we're the only species in the universe, because I wouldn't want this to be replicated too much. But I really, I just think that the majority of the people that live on this globe are decent, good human beings. It's the rabble-rousers that get all the attention. And that's what we have to watch out about reading the news. We have to dismiss it somewhat. Otherwise, we're going to live a very pessimistic life, and we will become a bitter humanity.
Thank you.
Irene, go ahead. Unmute yourself. Unmute, Irene.
Me? Okay. It was the most ennobling and spiritual discourse. And I learned so much from your presentation, Rabbi. One question, on the one hand, in the presentation, we said, God, in his infinite wisdom, he created his creation in completion. It was complete.
I didn't say that.
Perfection? Completion? No, I didn't. I misheard.
I read a translation that suggests that the world was completed at creation.
Ah.
That was the King James and other translations in the English, where they translated the Hebrew as has been done, and the Hebrew really says to be done. So
Okay.
the world was not completed at creation, according to the text, the original text.
Okay. Then at the same time, we say that we are owners of our own free will, and God, in his infinite wisdom, seeks to complete his creation through us.
Through us.
Through the human. Now, does that raise a question, fundamental question, of whether when we have the outcome of an event, when we do something, that the outcome is predetermined by God's will, or is it that we are totally responsible for the outcome of that event? Namely, the event is an outcome of our free will. Where does free will come into the picture in the implementation of God's will? How does it fit in?
First of all, free will. Let me say something about free will. When it says we created in the image of God, right? That's what the Bible says. That's what the myth is. Okay, now, God doesn't look like me. And he doesn't look like if he would pick on anybody he would like to be in his image, he probably would pick me. However, I know nothing about God, but I cannot think of God as not being free willing. Our image of God is our free will. That is to say, we are in control of ourselves. We can determine for ourselves what we do. Things happen beyond our will. And therefore, when you talk about consequences of things, you have to, I believe the following, that nothing happens accidentally. Nothing. Everything happens because there's some previous cause to it that causes it. You cannot say, I had an accident. You can only say is something happened. I didn't check the brakes on my car, and therefore it hit another car. And therefore the consequences was, no, it's not an accident. It fulfilled every principle in the book. You didn't check your brakes. You drove too closely. You had an accident. It's not an accident. This is what you can expect it to happen. And therefore, I don't know if I'm answering your question completely, but I would be very careful about using the word free will as being in conflict with God's being free to do whatever he intends to do. Our free will is limited to our experiences here on earth. God's free will is unimaginable and inexplicable.
Thank you.
Anybody else
Sarah?
want to start up?
Yes, I have a question.
Irene, go ahead.
Okay, so in dealing with our relationship with God, and that this is an imperfect world, what if, when we talk about things like the Holocaust, how do we explain that and the relationship that we are partners with God?
Oh, When we are partners with God, the world expands and develops and creates because we're partnering with the ideal of God. When there is a Holocaust, it is an absolute denial of that.
Right.
God has nothing. You cannot put God in the Holocaust at all. The Holocaust was not designed by God. It was designed when man forgot God or forgets the ideal of the divine on earth and commits horrendous acts. When there is no, when we say God, it's a difficult thing. For instance, God is the highest ideal and idea that we can conceive of and be in touch with, and we have pulled God down into our mind to expand him. The evil ones do just the opposite. They deny all that is godly, and therefore they themselves become gods and want to control the universe. You know, this evil in God's world is such a lengthy discussion. It's a whole theodicy that one has to discuss. So the question is a good question, but the answer is far deeper and far longer than we have here, and even far beyond me.
No, that's
Sarah, I have a question.
Oh, please.
Rabbi Jerry, thank you very much for the wonderful presentation. I wonder if you could just expand a little bit further on this notion that, God rested so that he or she could create room for us to finish the creation, and that our role is to, expand upon, what God started. And maybe just go back to the original source, because I think you went through that pretty fast. What specific verse in the Torah were you referring to?
You want that one? There's a specific verse in the Torah?
Well, yeah, start with maybe a specific verse and then just expand upon that idea. What does God expect of us moving forward?
Well, first of all, it's if you have a Bible, it's chapter 2. You got a Bible?
I do.
Okay, get chapter 2. Why don't you read sentences 1 through 3?
Well, this is the King James now, right?
Oh, well, I can't help that, but you read it anyway, and
Okay.
I'll correct. Is this the new version or the old one?
Is there more than one King James?
Oh, yes, there's many versions.
I'm sorry, I don't know that.
Okay, you read it now. You read it, and I'll tell you.
All right. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the hosts of them. And on the seventh day, God ended his work, which he had made. And he rested on the seventh day from all his work, which he had made. And God
had made. Oh, okay, stop there. There.
All right.
All the work which he had made, meaning what?
Done. Yeah.
The Hebrew is much different. It says, "Vayvorech Elohim et Yom Hashvi'i vaykadesho so, kivo shovat mikol malachto asher bara Elohim la'asot." To do. God rested from all his work to be done. To be done, the infinitive. And that's when the rabbis squeeze out, what is this to be done? Who's to do it? So then they come in throughout the rest of the Bible and they find evidence that it is for us human beings to continue the creation that God began. And he left it for us to be done. And that's why the psalmist says, you gave us all this for us to do. Psalm 8. You might want to check that one out. Write it down, Psalm 8. I don't know exactly which sentence. It's not that big of a psalm anyway. Okay?
That's just a beautiful, beautiful thought. Thank you so much.
It is.
Yeah.
Okay. You're welcome.
If you have a comment or a question, just speak up, because I can't get all of you on my screen. So please go ahead and just speak up. I don't want to miss you.
I would like to say something, Sarah.
Go ahead,
Lena.
Lena. Yes.
Rabbi Danzig, I loved everything that you said, and I certainly learned a lot too. And I especially love what you said about the purpose of life and how we are partners with God and to expand and enhance creation. I hope I said that correctly from what you said.
That's good.
And for me, from the Baha'i writings, I read that our purpose too is to carry forward an ever advancing civilization. And I'd love for you to speak more about this idea of expanding and enhancing creation.
To expand, you mean?
Mhm. How we
To expand creation.
and enhance creation, I think you said.
And what?
To expand and enhance creation.
When you and I look back, and I go back, let's just look back 100 years ago. The difficulty that life was, it wasn't so easy. You lived off the land, you worked the land very hard, you didn't have modern equipment, you had a horse and a plow, and you worked from sunup to sunset. And most people struggled for life. There weren't convincing, diseases were rampant. I mean, when we take a look at the yellow fever and we take a look at the various diseases, and we take a look at 19 before the polio vaccine, we take a look at how many young children were put in iron lungs because it was infecting. 50,000 children were infected by polio. I mean, this was in the 50s. And then in fact, our president, Roosevelt, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, was afflicted with polio. Just take a look at that. And then all of a sudden, a guy by the name of Jonas Salk, he gets up and he finds a vaccine. He injects himself first and his wife and his 2 sons, and to see if the vaccine is efficacious. And he uses his own family to test the vaccine. And when he finds that the vaccine is effective, he then creates this vaccine, okay? And it stops. 50,000 were reduced to 1,000 in a period of 3 years. That's progress. That is enhancing the world, eliminating diseases. Edward R. Murrow interviewed Jonas Salk, and he says, why didn't you, who owns the patent for the Salk vaccine? So Salk answers Edward R. Murrow, and he says, the people. Can you, the sun, he asks. And so he makes it universal, and polio is now controlled completely. That's in a way of enhancing life. So every innovation that makes the quality of life for anyone better, no matter where they live, if it makes it better quality of life, that's enhancing, that's expanding creation, making people from a sickly people to a productive people. That's enriching and advancing life.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, if there are no more questions, I will go to my daughter where we're going to have dinner in our sukkah.
Can you hear me?
Oh, no, there's more questions. We have a lot more time.
Okay.
Oh, we do?
Oh, yeah, we have another at least half an hour.
Ooh.
And there might be comments too. So hopefully the dinner will be waiting for you.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
You can hear me.
Yes. Go ahead.
Okay, I studied in Germany as an exchange student. I was very interested in the Holocaust and all these things. And I think knowing the Germans, three things that I think contributed a lot to it. Number one is the bubonic plague. And I was very impressed with how the Germans thought that this was something that was the Jews were putting a curse on them. And the point is the Jews bathed, Europeans didn't. And when I was there, the baths were rare. And they also didn't have seances where you had all the sick people come in for 10 days. They buried their dead quickly, and there are reasons for this. But in many places in history, they assumed that they were against the Jews because of this. Fast forward, another part of this is when I talked to German students and all that, they were, then you get to the question of money lending and all that. And it was forbidden by all the religions, and they left it to the Jews that could be the ones, and then they punished them for that. And the third part of this, which I definitely saw examples of, was that I think a lot of the a unexpected part of the Holocaust is that the Germans had a chance to disregard the payments, and I think I saw a lot. I talked to people, and I saw a lot of this going on. This was one reason I think they failed to take a stance and so forth, is they could cancel their debts because they didn't have to pay them. And that's one of the horrible things that is, again, these are three points of the Holocaust that I was very impressed with.
So, Rabbi, do you have a response to that?
No.
Oh, okay, thank you. There is a question on the chat list, which I think is kind of interesting. If the news is sensationalized, how are we to discover what's going on in the world? Yeah, go give that one a try. How do we sort it out? How do we find out what's truth, what's fact?
You know, in today's day, sadly, I hate to say this, but we don't know what's true anymore. The truth is no longer existent. We read the newspapers and we don't know what's true. And the problem with that is if there is no such thing as truth anymore, then there is lies. And that is a terrible situation to be in. There is truth, but the truth is always questioned by some extremist or some politician or whatever it might be. Or the truth can be denied. I mean, it's being denied in Washington, D.C. almost every day. The truth of the election, the truth of what happened, the truth of January 6th. Nobody knows what's true. People are just questioning, well, I don't believe what I saw. Well, if you don't believe what you saw and you can't believe what you read and you don't believe what you hear, we're living in a state of confusion. And that's what I think it is. How do we get out of it? Listen, if I knew how to get out of it, I wouldn't be glued to this chair in front of this computer of mine. I would have an answer. It's up to the leaders to help sort out what is true and what is false, not to argue in Congress about the truth and the lies. And that's why there's such confusion. It brings almost tears to my eyes when I think about it. When truth is being disintegrated, my God, what is there to believe in? It's hard. We're living in a very difficult time. My talk to you before is because I live in a world of ideas. It's one way of me escaping the disaster of what we're creating. So I have to go back in order to re-energize myself. I go back to my tradition in order to keep my humanity afloat and my truth above the lies. You're on, Kill.
If I may make a comment, I find it helpful to sort out the to sort out facts from truth. Truth, I believe, is something we live, and truth, beauty, and goodness all go together. And that has to do with the foundation, as I was talking about earlier, the foundation, the philosophical foundation that our thoughts can give us. Now with facts, that's a little different question. You know, how do we figure out the facts of something? It's way beyond me. I don't know, because there are so many people that have different ideas on what the facts are. However, finding truth in the news, that to me is a what is the word, an oxymoron. You don't find truth in the news. I don't believe. I believe we find truth in ourselves, and we go forth to enhance and create that truth in our lives, our own little lives. Most of us are not going to be doing any great things in the world. We're just going to be doing those little things in our lives. So that's my kind of my philosophic foundation at this point.
Well, I have to question a little bit about that.
Please.
When you say you find truth within yourself, that's very subjective. I want to find truth and facts objectively, because when it is objective, then it is known throughout the world and nobody can contest it. But when you contest facts, objective facts, and say that they're not true, that's what's confusing in the world.
Right. So if one was to say that God is love, that seems like it would be a universally true. Do you agree with that? God is love?
Well, excuse me, but I think it's too simplistic.
Oh, it's definitely simplistic. I am simplistic. I'm not capable.
No, you're not. You're complex. The answer, God is, I wouldn't even attempt to quantify or qualify God.
Now, I was just wondering if it could be considered a true statement. You know, a factual statement, we don't know if it's a factual statement because we don't know God. I mean, you know, but is it a true statement? You see, I guess it is. It is subjective. Truth is subjective. Fact should be able to be objectified. Robert, join us, please. Robert Esch.
Well, I'm thinking if Rabbi, if our goal is to expand and enhance creation, then I'm sort of combining that with Sarah's idea that if God is love, then the way we would expand and enhance creation is through loving each other, serving each other. And in that way, we would serve God and serve each other. What do you think?
You're right, because in the Torah itself, just the 5 books of Moses, the word v'ahavta, and you shall love, the word love is, I think, about 45 times repeated throughout in various contexts in the Torah. So love is obviously a very important. However, one thing about love, I think love is very, very complex, and we have trivialized it. For instance, I'll give you an example. Well, bear with me, would you? I'm an old man, okay?
We all are. You don't have anything on most of us.
So when I say I love mocha chocolate ice cream, I love it. However, that love is much different when somebody says to me, how do you like your new car? Oh, I love my new car. Which is much different than when somebody would say, you have a pet. Oh, I love my pet. My little dog, Motzi, I love him. That's a different dimension of love than when I say, I love a stranger. I would love for the stranger to be well accepted and to thrive in our community, which is another dimension of the love I have for my next door neighbor with whom I've had commerce, we carpool, etc., which is different dimension of love that I have for my wife and my children, for whom I would sacrifice my own life. So love itself is very complex, even though there is love throughout the Bible. In context of the situation, it is a different dimension in each situation. Am I hearing things?
Yeah, somebody needs to,
Is that God calling me?
please go ahead.
Anyway, that's what I think about love. So we have to be very careful when it's used, how it's used, in what context, and what relationship.
But isn't that why we define God as what in the negative, that God is not love? God is not, you know.
That's negative theology. That's correct. In other words, to say, I don't know what God is, but I know what God is not.
Right.
He certainly is not me or you or anybody else on earth.
Right.
Thank you, Irene. Negative theologist.
Nazir, please. Unmute yourself, Nazir.
Here's a question that I struggle with as a space scientist. All of us in different traditions, we have our views of cosmology built around the earth and us as human beings. And we know how insignificant our earth is and how insignificant our solar system is in this enormous cosmos. And as a space scientist, on a probabilistic basis, seems reasonable that there are other beings out there. So when we construct our worldview and we give ourselves a pat on the back saying that, you know, we are here to do God's work and so on, are we being somewhat, as human beings, are we being somewhat egocentric?
Certainly we are. While if you look, as a scientist, I'm not in your field at all, but as a scientist who sees the universe in such an expansive view, where there might be indeed other life on other planets or other galaxies or God knows what, somewhere in the beyond. In that view, looking down on Earth, we are insignificant. But we live here on Earth, and here is where we are significant. I am not going to be reduced to insignificance from some alien who's out there 50 galaxies away and looks down and says, look at that little pimple. I have to live on this earth where what I do makes a difference, where I am significant or I can be significant. So you can look at it from one way, way above there, and say we're just a speck in the whole cosmos, and therefore we're insignificant. But I say, look, we're living down here on Earth, and this is where we are significant.
Thank you, Rabbi. That was good. As Maulana Rumi would say, you're not just a drop in the ocean. You're the ocean in a drop.
Good. And by the way, the word was not drop, but was drip. You're not a drip in there. Never mind, forget it.
So once again, if you have a comment, please just speak up because I can't see all of you, or a question. We've got a good conversation going here, a good dialogue. And this is what's really exciting to those of us who work on the big questions, is to hear each other.
I have a question, Sarah.
Please, Channing.
Hi, Rabbi Danzig. This is Channing Miller. We've met before. And thank you so much for your presentation today. I'm just wondering, you know, in terms of the advancement that we've talked about technological advancement, we've talked about health advancement, we talked about much advancement in our world in the last 100 years. And I'm just wondering, what would your thinking be around how we can change the dynamic of our relationship with other people? Our compassion, you know, I mean, it's not all about material things. It's really about our hearts. I'm just wondering what you might have to say about that.
That is the big question. We have become divisive. And I will admit that religion has been a divisive force as well as it could be a unifying force. When I said before about the Talmud is a prophylaxis against literalism and fundamentalism. When you have a religion that thinks that it is the only truth, you have a problem. When you think a nation is the best in the world and everybody should emulate it, we have a problem. Whenever there's somebody thinks that they have a monopoly on truth or God, we have a problem. So if we are to do what you're suggesting, which I think is noble and right and purposeful and ideal, is that for all differences that make up the fabric of this world, if all the differences would just say, this is what I believe, and I have a right to my beliefs based upon my history, which comes from my father, which comes from his father, which comes from his father, all the way down to Abraham. This is my path. Respect mine, and I'll respect your path. You came from another part of the world, and you grew up with other traditions and other things that are strange to me as mine is strange to you, but respect them. Respect. If we could do that instead of in churches or anywhere else or in mosques or synagogues, try to say we have a monopoly on what is right and what is true and what you should believe and what you should not believe, then we have a problem. So what we have to do is advance through our institutions, religious and national, to respect other people's culture, other people's religion, and other people's way of life, as strange as they may be. But we don't. And that's where the problem lies, I think.
It's very hard to respect somebody else's way of life when that way of life seems to be harmful to the way of life of others. How do you respect that?
Well, that's what I said before. I got to go back to Kant's categorical imperative. Can what this person that you have described just now, should that be universalized? And if you say it should not be universalized, then work against it and argue against it. What happened just our discussion just a little while ago, there are things there that we said that we thought should be universalized. Respect should be universalized. Those who don't respect, that cannot be universalized. And I think that's an important part of the conversation. Universalizability of our ideals, not the universalizability of my ideal, my belief, my truth, because that's very subjective.
That concept of universalized, what is it?
Universalizability?
Universalizability is an interesting concept, because if something is not, if it can't be universalized, then it would seem like—
Not that it can't be, it shouldn't be.
Shouldn't be, right, shouldn't be. If it shouldn't be universalized, then it would seem that it should be isolated. And
right.
And that might be one of the problems with some of the news, is that instead of isolating the things that should not be universalized, they are promoting it by even paying attention to it.
Exactly.
But then you can't ignore evil. You know, I think Meister Eckhart said, all that is necessary for evil to win in the world is for enough good people to do nothing. So we can't just ignore evil. And maybe this falls into what one of our purposes is to emphasize the good, the true, and the beautiful, wherever we find it. And I see that Robert Esch wrote, I think there is a spirit of truth in us. We can pray for clarity, possibility. So what if we assume that every human on the planet has the spirit of truth or the light of God, or there probably are many, many names for it. What if we assume that and look for that, even with those who don't show it? That could be called some form of love.
Could be. And we must understand another thing, that there is a growing population in the world of atheists, people who don't believe in a God, but who do believe in the universal goodness, in the universal ideal of helping one another and various other things. Religion doesn't have a monopoly on what is good or who is good. We must understand that too. I happen to believe in God, and that reality is so real in my mind that my behavior is determined by that reality. Other people have a different reality that determine their behavior. It doesn't have to be one that I have. So with that God is real, and therefore I always ask, what would God think if I did this? What would be the godly response? The atheist has a different framework of thinking along those lines, but they do this exact same good things that I do. We religious people, or we people who believe in God, have no monopoly on what is right, what is true, what is good, what is healthy, etc., etc. We just have a relationship that's different. That's a different dimension.
Yes. So is there anybody that I'm missing that would like to say something or ask a question? We've kind of interesting rolling along here with this question. What is the purpose of life? Do any of you have a personal purpose that you would like to share? Or even the purposes that Rabbi shared, which is to increase the love, to expand and enhance God's creation. I think that's just a beautiful universal purpose, to expand and enhance God's creation. And of course, God's creation is right next to us.
You know, Sarah, I'm going to speak up because I did have my hand up.
I'm sorry, I didn't see it.
And so anyway, I don't think I have anything very brilliant to say, but what's been troubling me really in the past year or longer, I have always had a very positive and good feeling, Rabbi, of life and the world. And I share, and I was particularly grateful to your translation, because my roots come from Catholicism, which once really pushed that they were the only way, and also that the purpose of the translation was love thy neighbor as thyself for the love of God, which I have always made my life's purpose in my daily life. often finding it very hard, especially, let's just for a little capsule, say for the whole January 6th debacle. And that just, January 6th was one day. But what that represents has really disturbed my balance in loving my neighbor as myself. So, or helping to my neighbor have like your translation. So how do I treat or look at those people? What would be your feeling?
You mean towards the people who violated the Constitution by jumping into the Congress?
Exactly.
What do I think? What do I think they should be?
Yes.
I think they should be prosecuted.
So how does that follow with loving thy neighbor?
I can't love those people. It doesn't follow.
Good.
Doesn't. I can't love, by the way, I cannot love evil.
Okay.
Because I can't even tolerate evil. I can't countenance evil in any form or in any shape from anywhere it comes. So there are things that cannot, for instance, there are things that are unforgivable. You can't forgive everything that somebody does. There are things that are so horrific that they are unforgivable, just as they are unforgettable. And just as I can't forgive everything that everybody does or anything that anybody does, I cannot love anybody who does evil. On the contrary, I have to stop them from doing further evil. That's what I think.
Thank you.
Maybe that's a form of love, is to stop those who want to do evil in the broader view. You know,
What's the broader view?
That's the broader view. Maybe love is a very can be a very strict disciplinary form too. It doesn't mean, oh yes, flowers and rainbows and balloons and all of that by any means. As any of you know who have had children, you don't allow them just to do whatever they want to do. Love has its dimensions of discipline, and it's very difficult.
Well, the only way I think that love comes out of combating evil is whenever evil is put down, it brings in the other end of the world love of other people. Once you diminish evil, you are advancing love in the world, the rest of the world. So those people who do evil should be punished so that love can expand in the world.
Yes.
Can you define what evil is?
Oh God, not me, you. What is evil? You know, it can be explained, but you know it when you see it. It's like something like that.
You feel it.
I think evil is anything that is anti-human, that is anti-good, that is against all that humanity can be and prevents it from being. That is a degree of evil. I think, I'll tell you what, you define good and just take the antonym and you'll have evil.
I hear you, and I guess it's hard for me to choose to define anything that is God and anything that is truth, because if God is an evolving God, then if I begin to define it, I limit it. And I do want God to be I want humanity to be ever growing in its expression and evolution and ability to be more God-like. And if there's a definition in my mind to what God is, then I've limited God, and then I stop growing.
Oh. Well, there's a subjective God and there's an objective God. The objective God is we do not know anything about God's essential nature. The subjective God is that which you have in your mind and that which determines your behavior. That's the evolving God.
Evolving God, yeah.
My God, when I was a youth, when I was very, very orthodox and limited in what I would do and could do, I had a very, very different concept of God then than I do today. You ask my children and they'll say it's not the same man. It is the same man, but it's the same man who evolved.
Yes.
As I said, by my education, reflections, experiences, and my associations.
Thank you. Joy had her hand up, and then after Joy, Chris, you had your hand up. So Joy, please go ahead.
If the wife is allowed to say something.
No.
Absolutely.
I wanted to just point to a microcosm and a macrocosm. And what Dr. Ahmed has shown us is that we are a speck in the universe. And if we want to keep living on this earth, which my husband will say was God's creation, and if we want to enhance it, we have to take a long, hard look at what's happening to the environment. And that's how we can show our love for the earth.
Yes. Thank you. Chris, did you want to say any more about your question on compassion?
Well, yeah, I just wanted to ask the rabbi if I understand exactly what you're saying about I cannot love those people, back to the January 6th and the whole entourage. Is it possible to not love them, but to have compassion for them? For being a therapist and a psychologist, I go back to what trauma some of them must have had to bring them to where they are now, and to have compassion for I see in Donald Trump, I see a little boy terribly rejected and manipulated, etc., and so forth. And so I see that little boy in there, and that's the only time I could conjure up a little bit of compassion. But I don't love him. I don't feel loving at all. The opposite. So I just wondered if compassion can slip in there a little bit. Certainly.
Absolutely, absolutely. Let me. You're a psychologist?
Yes.
Oh, I got to come to see you because I got a lot of problems. Anyway, getting back to your statement about compassion.
Yes.
I believe that a person is not an act. A person commits an act, but he or she is not the act. That is, a person can overcome an act that he or she did and become one which we would embrace again.
Uh-huh.
That to me would be compassion. And I think that's very important. A thief, a person in Les Mis, remember? He stole a piece. Huh?
Of course.
Yeah, of course you do. And he stole some bread because he was hungry. He was not a thief. He had to act to survive. After he did that, he is not a thief.
No.
So we embrace him again. That to me is a crucial, I don't know, I'm not a psychologist, but to me it is a crucial when I see a person who has committed something, I see him as a human being, not that act. And therefore, once that act has been recompensed, then I can embrace him because he's a human being. He's far more than one act. Those guys and gals who went on January 6th and broke in and into the Congress and everything else and damaged and did such horrible things, they did that. Once they are not that act. They are still human beings that can be rehabilitated and should be really rehabilitated and folded back into our arms.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
That's compassion.
And so you can experience compassion even as they are in their act.
Not as they are in their act. No.
Okay.
Once the act has been committed and once the appropriate
Oh,
recompense
it's
has been done.
conditional. It's conditional upon repentance or recovery.
After the recovery, then it's not conditional. He's a human being.
Okay.
You like that?
Now
Ye-
we're
You're not
slipping
sure.
into atonement talk, aren't we?
Well, listen, this is
Yeah.
the age. This is the
But
month.
it's all interconnected.
Right.
It is.
Okay.
Well,
And-
it's like you say to a child, we've been taught, what you did, you are not bad. What the act you did was wrong, but you are not bad. You are not wrong. And then that's your point. And that if you can uncover underneath is a good person, even an evil person.
Or a rehabilitative person.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think we are almost ready to complete our session, which has been really exciting. And thank you so much, Rabbi Danzig. I would just like to read what I found in the chat. There's a lot of interesting stuff in the chat from Sandra Norgren. And thank you, Robert, for putting that up there. She said, as you mentioned, there are many dimensions of love. God encompasses all dimensions of love. Perhaps there is a dimension of love that we are unaware of. We can love our neighbor in that way, but we don't yet understand it. But that does not mean that we condone what people do. And if they do evil acts, there are consequences for that behavior, which has nothing to do with whether we love them or not. That makes sense. And that sounds like it's a very good stopping place. We'll kind of leaving people hot and ready for the next session. We have 2 more sessions in 2021 dealing with the big question of what is the purpose of life. Next month, October, we will be hearing from a Sikh, Erica Baines. And in the month of November, we will hear from a progressive Catholic. And I don't remember her name. Sunshine, do you remember her name? No? Okay. So tune in and thank you so much, Jerry, Rabbi Jerry Danzig. I really appreciate your depth of thinking and your presentation. You've got us going. And I encourage all of us to go forth and continue to build the foundation for the rest of our house with some of these thoughts that Rabbi Danzig has given us. Thank you, all of you,
You're welcome.
for your time and
Thank
for
you.
coming. And we'll see you hopefully next month.
To teach, yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Will.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
Committee, do you want to meet? Committee, do you want to meet?